I was a pastor for 15 years in Michigan and in Colorado, and I've been working with Children's HopeChest for the past 10 years. And I will tell you this, as Pastor David said, I travel a ton, and I have led more people to Jesus on airplanes than I ever did in my 15 years of pastoring. Here's why. I'm 6'6", 270 pounds. And so I work for a nonprofit, for heaven's sake. So do you think I get to fly business class? No. So they make me fly in economy. And so I don't want to be on these planes any longer than I ever have to be. And so I am the utmost last person on the plane every time. So the minute that I step onto a plane, anyone with an empty seat next to him just begins to pray. And they're praying out, and when I pass their seat, they're like, thank you, Jesus. Even though they don't know Jesus, they are thanking Jesus. So I lead people to Christ all the time just by standing on a plane with people with empty seats. But it is such a blessing to be here at Church of the Crossroads. It's an amazing story. I work with churches all over the country, and to see a church that has done what you all have done through the power of the Holy Spirit is really quite remarkable. In only 2 years, what God is doing in your lives and in this community is such a blessing. And Pastor David and Pastor John, no, you guys are such a blessing. Pastor David and John, kind of. We do drink a lot of coffee. But the hospitality, wonderful. They speak so highly of this community. I was chomping at the bit. I was like, I cannot wait to get down to Louisville. And I know everyone's going to be in a great, great mood because the Wildcats snuck one out last night. I was like, that's great. But I don't understand why they can't be as good as Louisville, because Louisville, they won by like 20. I see the L's in the crowd. So, my name is Will, and I love the local church. And I believe that the church was ordained by Christ to be a light in this world, to be a voice for the voiceless, to carry the burden of the weak, and to bring justice to the oppressed. And today is Launch Sunday. And this is when each of you have an opportunity to come alongside families in Guatemala. And what that means is in this partnership, you are connected with what we call a care point in Guatemala. And the name of that care point is El Reparo. Can you all say El Reparo? El Reparo. So you all are speaking Spanish. So go ahead and turn to your neighbor and say, hola. Okay, so you guys are wonderful Spanish-speaking community. El Reparo, anyone, what does that mean? Thank you very much. Who said that? Outstanding. Somebody get her a gift. Awesome. Let's clap for her. She's fantastic. So yes, it means the repair. And so what God is going to be doing, He's going to be repairing a lot of things in that community. But you know what other community He's going to be repairing a lot of things? Right here as well. We believe in two-way transformation, both sides. I have been with Children's HopeChest for the past 9 years. And you're like, why did you leave the local church to go into ministry with a nonprofit and have to sit on cramped planes? I'll tell you. It was about 9 years ago that I was leading a trip in Ethiopia. And we were in the red light district of Ethiopia where there were over 40,000 young girls that didn't want to be there. These girls were ages 9, 10, 11, 12, young girls. So we would go and we would pray for these girls, with these girls. And I remember one girl, and they would never look you in the eye. And I remember distinctly one girl. We come up to her, she had been about, 12 or 13 years old. And I said, God loves you. And her chin came up from her chest, and she looked at me right in the eye. Never happens. Tears are streaming down her face. And what she said changed my life forever. She said, if God loved me, why would I be here? And I've got 2 daughters. And I know that I would scratch through a wall to protect my girls. And the still small voice of the Holy Spirit said, who's scratching through a wall to protect this one? And so the work that I do is connecting communities to support and to care for children through community development. And I believe it's a good work. And I believe it's a work that we're called into. The church that I was a pastor, one of the churches I was a pastor at, we had care points in Uganda and in Guatemala. And the partnership transformed our people in remarkable ways. So today, you enter into partnership with a community in Guatemala, as I said, called El Reparo, the Repair. It's a rural community in the coastal lowlands of southern Guatemala. Its people are sustenance farmers and day laborers who live in a constant state of survival. So that's a little bit about the care point called El Smart. You guys are way smarter than first service. I'm just going to tell you. Way smarter. And I see some first service people back there. Do not tell them I said that. So one of the things that I like to do is just say, just to make some comparisons. So what I need is audience participation is how many in here had something to eat so far today? Raise your hand, please. Just play along. Okay, excellent. How many have food in your cupboards at home? Okay, okay, that's everyone now. So that's called food security. All right, how many either rode in a car or drove a car here today? Audience participation. All right, pretty much everybody. How many slept on some sort of mattress last night? All right, pretty much. Yep. All right, he's got one too. Very good. How many of you either have a phone or some sort of computer or access to a computer? So basically access to the world, all the wonderful. All right. So the fact that most of you all raised your hands for this, A means, where's Pastor David, is that we've got to do a little bit of a mattress drive or something. There are some people out here not sleeping on mattresses. But the fact that you raise your hands for all of these make you in the top 5% richest people in the world. Did you know that? And you may not feel rich, but the fact that you have food security, that you have transportation, that you have access to the world and to markets across the world, and the fact that you're able to sleep on a bed make you in the top 5% richest people in all the world. Let's take this a step further. How many of you guys have pets and love your pets? How many of you not only have a bed for yourself, but actually have a bed for your pet? Let's hear it. Oh, yeah. See, we're so wealthy in this country is that we not only build a house for ourselves, we build a house for our cars, and we call it it's pretty remarkable. So one of the things that I like to do is talk about different holidays and what we spend as Americans in these holidays. And I usually take the most recent one. I'll do like Mother's Day, and we spend like $13 billion on Mother's Day and compare it to the GDP of countries, the gross domestic product in terms of everything that a country produces in a year. Or, Halloween is like $8 billion we spend and do all that comparison. Well, what's the holiday that we just experienced? Christmas. Oh, jeez. This really isn't a fair comparison. Did you know that Americans spend over $1 trillion on Christmas holiday, on Christmas purchasing? $1 trillion. Which is more than the gross domestic product of 181 nations. And there's only 197 nations on this planet Earth. The amount of resources that we have available to us is more than any other group of people in the history of the world. So what? Makes us materially rich. In Genesis, God says to Abraham is that I am going to bless you to be a what? That's right. Say that loud. That's right. I'm going to bless you to be a blessing. And that's kingdom currency. It's not socialism. It's stewardship. It's using our resources to spill over into the world, that we are blessed to be a blessing. So today is an opportunity to invest in the hope and future of some of the most needy in the world. Today at Crossroads, we're going to look at 4 C's. That's going to kind of be the whole thing of the message. Looking at the awesome logo of Crossroads, I saw a bunch of C's. So I said, well, let's make it C's. These people remember C's, like the wild cats, right? So they'll remember C's. So the 4 C's are, and this is where the quiz is going to happen, so don't let her fall asleep because she's going to be quizzed. The 4 C's are the challenge, the call, the commitment, and the change. The challenge, the call, the commitment, and the change. Number 1, what's the challenge? What are we talking about today? Guatemala is the most populated country in Central America, with the 6th highest rate of chronic malnutrition in the entire world. Hunger and extreme poverty make it very, very difficult for children to stay in school. So when children aren't in school, they get involved in gangs, prostitution, pressured into early marriage, or sold into marriage at ages 12, 13, and 14. The dropout rate in schools in the community that you're partnering with, called Reparo, is 91% dropout rate. Guatemala has been described as the worst place in the world to be a child. Just a couple years back, more than 660 children were murdered in Guatemala, with over 8,000 reports of sexual violence against children that same year. Organized criminal groups make an estimated $1.6 billion from sexual exploitation of children in Guatemala. Many of these statistics happen when young people move from rural villages like El Reparo into Guatemala City searching for opportunity. The needs can seem overwhelming, but I want to tell you that we serve a God who remembers, a God who sees injustice, a God who is among us, a God who is for us, a God who is with us, a God who is in us. So one of the analogies that we use, just so you know, Children's HopeChest is in Colorado Springs, and I live and work remotely in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Has anyone ever been to Michigan? A few of you have been excellent. Come up and talk to me and tell me where you've been in Michigan. So I'm from Kalamazoo, Michigan, and I think it probably holds true as we move down south through Indiana into Kentucky here, is what is the answer to this question? I'll ask one of you. How do you eat an elephant? It's the same. Let's give her a round of applause. Did anyone hear what she said? What do you think she said? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. At Children's HopeChest, we eat elephants very, very differently. So what we do is we bring everybody together in a room, and we call it a launch. And then we put a fork in everybody's hand. And you know what we're going to have after service today? Elephant. We're going to eat elephant, and we're all going to eat elephant together. So I don't want you, ma'am, to think that you have to eat that whole elephant by yourself, bite by bite, okay? So at Children's HopeChest, what we do is we try to get everyone involved, everybody involved in the community in terms of this challenge. So we want to know that God doesn't show favoritism. In Romans 2, verses 11, it says, God does not show favoritism. John 3:16, for God so loved the world, which includes everybody. But there does seem to be something very, very unique about God's posture towards the poor, towards the needy, towards the outcast, widow, orphan, lame, foreigner, marginalized, oppressed, and forgotten. We see in Psalm 68 that God is a father to the fatherless. A defender of widows is God in his holy dwelling. And then I love this in 1 Samuel 2, verse 8. God raises the poor from the dust, and he lifts the needy from an ash heap. And that word in the Hebrew for ash is actually dung. So he lifts the needy from a pile of, fill in the blank there, that's right. So he raises the poor from the dust, and he takes the needy out of a pile of stuff, and he seats them with princes, and he has them inherit a throne of honor. And so when you're talking about the poor and needy, there's this picture of royalty that we see in how God deals with the poor and needy. Therefore, we, being created in God's image, are called into something very redemptive, to join Christ in this process. So we've heard the challenge of what's going on in Guatemala, but what is our call? In James 1:27, one of the most famous verses, Jesus' brother would write, perfect religion, pure and perfect religion that God accepts as pure and faultless is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. You could also interpret that as perfect worship. Perfect worship is caring for orphans and widows. James would also write, Jesus' brother, just a chapter later, suppose a brother or sister without clothes and daily food. If one of you says, hey, go, wish you well, keep warm, keep well fed, but doesn't do anything about it, what good is that? In the same way, faith by itself, if it's not accompanied by this good works, it's not a live faith. And this is one of my favorites. So John the Baptist is getting everybody wound up and excited about the coming of Jesus, and it's going to be awesome, and people are getting to hear about this Messiah that's coming. And so he gives this unbelievable speech, and then everybody at the end of the speech has one question. They say, John, well then what do we do? How do we prepare ourselves? And John doesn't say, well, go and wash these feet, or go and purify yourself, or go and get baptized, or go. He says one thing. John says, if you want to prepare yourself for the king, he says, if you've got 2 shirts, give one of them to somebody who doesn't have a shirt. And if anyone has food, he should do the same. Jesus said himself is, whatever you do for the least of these, you're doing unto me. Again, that royalty connection of who we're serving. And the Israelites were in slavery for 400 years, and they'd forgotten what it meant to be children of God. And God reminded them through the 10 Commandments and through these rules and regulation that were helped to bring about blessing and freedom for the land and for the people. And in Deuteronomy 24, God says when you're harvesting your field and you overlook a sheaf, don't go back to get it. Leave it for the foreigner, the fatherless, the widow, so that the Lord may bless you in all the work of your hands. So there's something when we care for the poor and needy, that there's a blessing involved in the work that we do as well. When you beat the olives from your trees, don't go over the branches a second time. Leave it for the widow, the orphan, the foreigner. Same thing when you harvest your grapes in the vineyard. Leave what remains for the foreigner, the fatherless, and the widow, so that your work too may be blessed. Now again, I don't have any vineyards or olive trees in my backyard, but we all work during the week, and God is saying, remember the poor. Remember the poor, and I promise you that your work is going to be blessed when we remember the poor. And this is what partnership between Church of the Crossroads and Reparo is all about. What it is, it's an opportunity to stretch out your arms to Guatemala and to say to some of the poorest, most vulnerable people in the world that God sees you, God remembers, He loves you, He is with you, and that we are called by God to actively participate in the restoration and in the redemption of the world. And that's the truest revelation of our faith. We become this beacon of light, and that's what you're already doing in the community right here in Kentucky. And it's been a blessing just even over the last year and a half that I've known Pastor David and I've known Pastor John, and what you all are doing is truly remarkable. So you have the challenge, you have the call, and now you've got the commitment. What in the world did they get us into, right? You've probably said that before. So what they got you into is a partnership with El Reparo, a long-term partnership where you're going to come alongside that community and come alongside and be a catalyst for its idea of what development and sustainability looks like. And so the first step is what we're doing today, and it's called the launch. And we have something called the friendship model, and that's what we're doing today. How many have heard of child sponsorship before? Raise your hands. Most everyone in this room has heard of child sponsorship. Absolutely, that's when you go out. How old are you? You're 6 years old. Absolutely, mom and dad are here. They want to go out. They want to see a cute little 6-year-old so that my 6-year-old can have a great relationship with that. And that's all fine and good. And absolutely, the statistics and sponsorship programs, children stay in school longer. They get much better and higher paying jobs to support their families. They become leaders in the community. The statistics bear out all the time that sponsorship programs work. And why wouldn't they? Because mom and dad who are paying for the sponsorship get gripped by these beautiful, lovely eyes, and my daughter can have a relationship with this 6-year-old, and all that's wonderful. Except for about a year and a half ago, our Moldovan country director said, "Will, sponsorship doesn't work in Moldova, and here's why." And he went through this list, and I was like, wow, that's really undignified in terms of how we've been doing child sponsorship. And he said to me, "Will you permit me a stupid idea?" He got my attention because I'm the king of stupid ideas, trust me. And then he said, "What if the children choose families in America?" And I said, "That's the most brilliant idea I've ever heard," and it changed our entire organization. So now, instead of going and picking a child, what you're going to do at the end of service is you're going to say, "I want to support 1 child, 2 child, 3 child, 4 child, how many, whatever the Lord would speak to you about how many children that you want to support at $45 a month, which will take care of hiring staff at that care point in El Reparo. There'll be discipleship, there'll be educational, medical, and nutritional support in one of the most malnourished parts of the world. And so your $45 a month will make an impact, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take your picture. And you guys are partnering with Journey Church here in the area as well. And we are looking for 150 families that would say, we want to be a part of this. We want to be a part of the difference that this is making at $45 a month. And so we're going to take your picture today, and we're going to send all of your pictures over to Guatemala, and we're going to hang you on a wall. And then the children in that community, the orphaned and vulnerable children, are going to pick who's going to be their friend. And Pastor Dave and Pastor John are going to go to that launch in El Reparo next Sunday, and so they're going to know who the last one chosen was. They'll also know why. And so you're going to then get a picture back in the mail with the child holding your photo, and they're going to say why they chose you. And so you're still going to have a one-to-one relationship with a child at El Reparo, but we've given dignity and voice and choice to the child from the beginning. And so they choose you. So today is that day where we get 150 children into friendships with all of you. And so if you decide we want to support 10 children, which would be great, we're not going to take 10 of your photos, just one of your photos, and then we'll reproduce that 10 times. So the commitment is that, and then the second part of the commitment is we want you to go and to travel each year, and we don't do mission trips at Children's HopeChest. We do what are called partner visits. It's the strangest thing when teachers go and paint buildings on trips to me. We want teachers to go and to learn about what it means to be a teacher in Guatemala and then work with teachers. We want nurses to work with nurses. We want moms who are homemakers to work with moms who are homemakers in Guatemala. We want business leaders to work with business leaders. We want church leaders to work with church leaders. We want you to go and be fully who you are when you're in these communities. And so the Journey Church and Church of the Crossroads are going to take multiple trips every year to this community to build relationships. We want basketball players to go and teach the sport of basketball in Guatemala and also learn soccer, because you always go as a learner. We want football players to do football camps. We want you to go and to be who you are. So that's commitment number 2. And then the third commitment is helping to raise funds for sustainable projects that help create and lead a community into independence. We believe the best way to care for orphan and vulnerable children is to have a healthy community around them caring for orphan and vulnerable children. And so these community leaders actually have a development plan that this church is coming alongside to be a catalyst to, and they're raising funds for these projects as well. So those are the 3 commitments that you're making. You're making a commitment to support children in that community, 150. You're going to be traveling each and every year to spend time not only with the children, but to be yourselves in Guatemala, to climb volcanoes and to roast marshmallows and lava. That sounds pretty cool, right? And then to help raise funds for sustainable development. So that's the commitment. So we've talked about the challenge, we've talked about the call, and it's finally time to talk about the change. What difference does it make? One of my favorite stories in all of HopeChest is this kid named Silver, kid in Uganda. So we roll up on Silver. Years ago, this kid had wires hanging from him. You know, he had these broken glasses and things like this. This real Poindexter guy. And we're like, what's this kid's story? Silver had lost his mom and he had lost his dad. He was the oldest of 5 siblings, so he was in charge. He was a child-headed household at 13 years old. So he was trying to figure it out, and he said, God gave me a gift that I can fix anything. So he was El Reparo hombre when it came to fixing watches, when it came to fixing cell phones in the bush of Africa, when it came to fixing solar panels, generators, radios, whatever. He could fix anything. God just kind of gave him that gift, and he would use all of his funds to put his siblings through school. And we were like, Silver, you're an amazing kid. He says, you want to see something amazing? And he took us into his hut. So we're in his mud hut, and he pulls back this curtain, and he says, you know what that is? I said, I have no idea what that is. He says, that's a radio station, and I built that radio station out of spare parts. And he says, take me in your van. So we go out in his van, we drive 2 miles away, and we still hear music, Christian music playing, and he says, this radio station is how I get the word of God out into this community. We're like, Silver, my goodness. And then we're walking down the road, and his wrist starts ringing. And he said, oh, yeah, let me take this call. So he takes a call in the middle of the bush of Africa on that little phone there, that watch phone that he created out of spare parts. So now Silver is at electrical engineering school in Kampala, in the capital city of Uganda. And you know who the most popular kid at the school is? Silver. Do you know why he's so darn popular? Because he can fix anything. He can fix anything. And I love some of his quotes where Silver says, you have changed my life and my destiny forever. Thank you for those who support me, encourage, and love. You have given me hope and put a smile on my face. I am pursuing my future goals and have faith that I will be a great man. That is my dream. You see, this friendship program is not just about food, medical care, and support for education. It's about fostering dreams. It's about aspirations and hope. Let's bring it closer to El Reparo. This group of women here, these are my jam ladies. So our community, our national staff goes into this community, one of our other care points, and we always look for assets. What are the assets in this community? And these women say, we make jam and salsas that people like. Well, that's great. Let's create a business out of that. And so these women are all single moms whose husbands either have abandoned them and their children or their husbands have died. So these are widows. These are single moms. And now we've created, our national staff came alongside and created business principles and given them access to markets through our other care points and through contracts with different hotels. And so these women are now being able to provide and support for their families, doing something that they naturally were gifted to do by God. And that's to make some of the most awesome jam and salsa in all of Guatemala. And they've now become sustainable and broken the cycle of poverty. See, Jeremiah 22:16 says, when you encounter God, I believe when you encounter God, life changes. when you know God. And that was my bottom line as a pastor, is helping people know God. And Jeremiah 22:16, God says, if you want to know who I am, if you want to know me, then defend the cause of the poor and needy. Do that and all will go well. You get this common theme about reaching out, defending the cause of the poor and needy, that there's a blessing, that there's a knowledge of God, that there's transformation, but it has to be on both sides. It's not just about silver. It's not just about my jam ladies. It's about us too. And last year, one of the most transformational moments came to me while I was in Guatemala. So I'm in Guatemala, and we're in this unbelievably busy highway. And we have to get to a certain point on this highway or the road shuts down for like 3 hours. And this is 3 lanes just jam-packed. We are not moving. And we hadn't moved for like an hour and 15 minutes. And I'm stuck in a van with a bunch of pastors. That's funnier to me, but anyway, which is great. So we're playing 80s trivia and all this sort of stuff. We're just not moving. And we're like, we're going to be stuck here like all night because of this road construction stuff. So the driver says, hey, open the windows, and I'm taking out the key. We got to save gas. So now we're at risk of running out of gas. And so we're sitting there for another 45 minutes or so, and then the traffic starts to move. The driver quickly scurries, and he puts the key into the ignition and turns the ignition, and nothing. It doesn't start whatsoever. It's just tick, 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 tick. And now we're at danger of risking our lives because all the other traffic is moving. They don't really see us. And I'm like, we're going to die here on the road. I'm like, everybody out. So we all kind of get out of the van. Now we're a bunch of white people that are exposed, right? And so the semi-truck pulls over. And in Guatemala, it's very, very rare that you'll get that type of help. And this semi-truck pulls over, and this dude here gets out of the car. He's got no shoes on. He's carrying how old is that kid? I don't know. A couple years old? 2? Okay, carrying this little girl, this beautiful little girl. And he's like, what's the problem here? And he starts working on our vehicle. And 10, 20 minutes later, he's like, we need a new battery. So he gets a battery from his truck and puts it in our truck, and he's jumping things, and he's fixing things. Sweat is pouring out. The little girl's having a great time, right? She's driving our broken down van. And I'm like, I bring over all the pastors, and I'm like, okay, you're not going to be cheap here. We gotta help this guy. This guy is helping us. He's saving us on the side of the road. What's your time worth? So I passed the hat, right? So the hat fills up, and I had to pass it more to one of these other pastors. I said, I'm going to pass it again to you. Put the money in kind of thing. And so we get all these quetzales, the big wad, and I said to our staff person, Nestor, I said, hey, Nestor, I said, I want you to make sure that this guy gets this for helping us. So Nestor goes over. We're all sitting in the van, goes over, hands this guy this wad of cash. And, we don't we're kind of feeling good about ourselves and things like that we just probably gave him 2 years worth of salary with all that. Nestor comes back on the bus. We pull off, and he gives me the wad of cash back. Like I said, I told you to give that to him. He said, I tried. And his quote still sticks with me. This guy, barefooted, trucker in Guatemala with a 2-year-old daughter, looks at this sizable wad of cash and says, let's not confuse help with an opportunity to make money. God bless you. And when you talk about discipleship and your heart being changed, let's not confuse help with an opportunity to make money. And I'm like, man, how many altruistic things do I do in my life? And it challenged me. And that's what I'm talking about when it comes to two-way transformation. So as I finish my time with all of you today, I'm excited to watch God at work in your lives because you said yes to defend the cause of the poor and needy in El Reparo. And I think of Moses at the burning bush. His people were slaves in Egypt for 400 years, and he had left the royal Egyptian family to go and hide away. But God had a plan for his people, and there was an encounter at a burning bush. And God said 4 things. Number 1 is he said, I've seen the oppression of my people, and I'm concerned. In verse 8, he says, I've come down. And we're all like, yeah, God, go get them. They've oppressed your people, you go get them. Verse 10, so I'm sending you. But you said you were coming down. And in that promise of verse 12, God says, I will be with you. I've seen the oppression of my people, and it concerns me. So I've come down, and I'm going to send you, and I'll be with you. And I still hear the echo of those words thousands of years later, echoing off the walls of Church of the Crossroads, resounding in each one of our ears. We know the challenge. We've heard the call. We're ready for the commitment and believe for the change in our lives and in the community of El Reparo because God is with us. Thank you so much for your time and for your attention and for the hospitality today. Those of you that went to Michigan and have a story about Michigan, I'd love to hear it. Will you pray with me?